And good evening, everybody. Welcome to How to Inspect the Exterior. Uh, so, for those of you that don't know, my name is Phil Dancer, home inspector, certified professional inspector, certified master inspector. I'm from Maryland, hopefully this should be a really good course. As mentioned a few moments ago, there's a lot of really good information to go through. We'll spend time on certain areas a little bit more than others. As you all have questions, feel free to put them there in the chat because we have a lot to get through. We'll try to answer the questions as many as we can towards the at the end. For some reason, if we can't get to everything, feel free to reach out to me later on, and then we can chat about it. So, alrighty, here we go. All right, so how to inspect the exterior. Okay, so from an inspection tool standpoint, there are a lot of different tools that we as home inspectors can use in order to help us do our job. So some of the more basic tools that you can have is obviously you always want to keep overalls or coveralls with you in your vehicle. If for some reason if there is a crawl space that you weren't aware of, always a great idea just to have it handy. I keep several of them in my truck, just in case because I'm always on the go. Obviously, keep shoe covers with you. Booties, if you will, as we all know, so some sellers, want us to have them on. I actually prefer just to walk around in socks most of the time, just so I can feel the floors a little bit more. From a PPE standpoint, I think we all know keep masks with you. I've got tons of N95 masks, gloves, safety glasses, depending on where you're going, because sometimes we just don't know where we're going to end up. Knee pads are very, very important. Just we crawl we crawl around a lot. Flashlights, obviously, tape measures. We need them for different things. Some of the other items I think are also just important to have: levels of various lengths, screwdrivers. Naturally, we need ladders. Infrared cameras, I think, are invaluable, and moisture meters. In moisture meters too. A lot of what you'll see doing the exterior inspection is a lot of it's water related. It's how do we prevent water from getting into the home, from transitioning into the home, but then also how do we identify where that water may be transitioning in, and what can that water do if it does start to transition inwards there. So it's important to keep that in mind. Keep the water as far away from the home as possible. So when we are inspecting the exterior of the home, there's a lot to look at on the exterior. So it's important to make sure that you have a process in place that you're following every single time. Because as we're all going to get distracted at some point by external factors. So the more that we have a process in place, the better we're going to set ourselves up for success. So, part of that is how do we look at it from a macro and micro standpoint. So, one of the things that's important to do is look at the home as far away back as you can, and try to take in just like the overall structure of the house from each elevation. So, is any portion of the home sagging? Is any portion of the home leaning in either direction? Is anything moving? Are there any obvious signs of any open holes or gaps or cracks that could allow water to transition into the home? Now, if you are starting to see those signs, naturally, write those things down, note those things down. If you do see something where there is a spot where water can transition through, as you're noting that in your report, also keep a mental note of that too, because when you move inside the home, you're going to want to do your best to try to confirm as best as you can, either with an infrared camera or a moisture meter, that water is or is not transitioning during the inspection, right? Because everything is at the time of the inspection. Now, once you've taken it all in from as far back as possible, now you're moving closer, and you'll be able to get a better sense of what's happening. It's important to also, as you're looking around the outside, make sure you're interactive with the house, because just because something looks okay doesn't mean it actually okay. So I'm sure we've all found it where it's something looked to be okay on the surface, but then when you actually start poking it with your finger or a probing tool or a screwdriver, it's like, ah, that is soft. That's rotted. Somebody painted over that. So we all have our stories. So definitely interact with as much of the home as you can. But then also, the exterior is a large portion of what we're all doing. The exterior can be up to 1/3 of the entire inspection. So it's important to really spend a good amount of time on the exterior because it can a lot of problems with a home can actually start with the exterior. All right, so home inspection standards of practice. I'm sure the majority of us have reviewed the standards numerous times. I think the most important thing to take away when it comes to the home inspection standards of practice is that we all need to set proper expectations with our clients. So what does that mean? Setting proper expectations. The more that our clients know what we are there to do and not to do, and what is considered to be reasonable, the more that they're going to be happy with what we're doing. Oftentimes, I see the biggest pitfalls are when clients don't understand what the end goal is. Because remember, this is a general home inspection. General meaning we're trying to give them a general idea as to the condition of home, and not this is every single possible defect that exists. Then they're going to be a lot happier. There are going to be a lot less surprises for them, and it's just going to be a greater overall experience. We will get back to videos towards the end. Some of the different this slide has a lot of the different types of definitions for a lot of the exterior trims and facades. Fascinating. Some of the homes that we all go to can be actually quite detailed, but it's pretty neat to be able to see all the different names there. But from a door and window standpoint, obviously, whenever you've got a large opening, around the home, you want to pay very close attention to those particular systems. Nothing is ever waterproof, right? Only water resistant. So we want to make sure that they're sealed, that these openings are sealed as much as possible. And some of the common, if you will, that constantly need attention and repair or replacements are around the weather stripping for the doors, but then also over time just damage causing. Things that I've seen over the years are sills for doors and windows. Now, all sills, which is the bottom part of the door, bottom part of the window, they should always be sloped in such a way where as water as it rains, part of that particular system should direct the water away from the home. But it's always a gentle slope, and sometimes you could actually find that sill when you look down is either flat or actually it has a reverse pitch to it, and it's important to be able to note those to the clients that the sill needs to be adjusted and corrected and the condition resolved. And if for some reason, if water is being directed towards the home, then you could have some additional areas of need, so damage around those openings. Now, one of the other things I think is also very important to know, that I've seen throughout the years in terms of just feedback from my friends from all over the country. And again, this centers around setting proper expectations with all the families that we're helping. Is that whenever we feel that there's a condition where water could sit in an area, be directed in towards the home, or may have been allowing water to transition into the home for quite a period of time, we need to tell these families that there could be damage around these windows and doors. Could, may. Because even if we're saying the caulking is damaged, the seal is broken, the sill is actually directing water back into the home, the clients and the families aren't always putting two together and thinking, oh, water damage. So the more that you can set those proper expectations with families that there is that possible chance, just know when you go through a renovation, when you replace the floor, when you replace the door, replace the window, there may be some more areas of need in this particular area. and then everything is fine. It's only when they're not, when those expectations aren't set, then that's when you can have some additional conversations that you don't want to have. So door components, different types or different sections of the door. Everything from top rails, top rail, the bottom rail. You've got the panels in the middle, but different parts of the door actually so when inspecting doors, there's a lot of different things that you can actually look for. Everything from mechanical damage. So hinges, are the hinges on? Is it easy to open and close these doors? Do those doors swing open on their own? So do they not stay closed? Do they not stay shut? Which actually, and if for some reason, if they do not, then that could be indicative of other problems, possibly structural problems. Painting where the paint is worn away. Flashing defects. We all know flashing is how we try to prevent water from transitioning into the home. Damaged caulking, deteriorated caulking is something that always comes up in every single inspection. Depending on the type of home that you're inspecting, the caulking may be the only thing that's actually preventing water from transitioning through. Not every door, not every window has flashing around it, depending on the age. And even if a home was built today, the flashing tape around a particular door or window may be damaged. It just may be missing. So very, very, very important. I think we've all experienced that before. So very, very important. Make sure that we are calling out damaged caulking. Fogged window panes on for the doors or windows. I think that's something that we come across pretty often there. But then also, whenever you're coming across damaged caulking, see if you can probe a little bit and look for wood rot. Look for water damage. It happens. All right, so egress doors. So all egress doors should be readily openable from the inside without the use of a tool, a key, or any type of special knowledge. Door measurements. So the required door, it has to be a single hinge door. It must be 3 feet wide and 6 feet 8 inches tall. Landing width. The landing width should not be less than the door's width. Actually, minimum dimensions for every single landing is 36 inches in measurement. Now, when you are especially looking at these egress doors, the exterior doors, take a look at the floor for the around that door as well. The floor of the landing should not be more than 1.5 inches below the top of the threshold. Nobody wants to trip. But then also talking about taking a look at the floors itself, because of the fact it's so close to that large opening. You will find bottom left, bottom right corners when you're inside the home, especially if you have damaged caulking on the outside. There's a high probability you will also see water staining on the trim there. And you can see the water starting to travel upwards, which is what we call capillary action. So that's something that's good to look out for. Windows. So different parts of the window. So as we all know, windows is a transparent opening in the wall that allows passage of light, air, and sound. Modern windows can be glazed or covered in some other transparent or translucent materials. We actually, depending on where the home is located, we can actually beef up, if you will, the thickness of the window to try to deaden the sound that's transitioning into the home. So if if the home is being, let's say for new construction, so if the home is being built in an area where it's close to the highway, above a major flight path, then you can have beefed up windows. If you are closer to the water, you can have beefed up windows that is more water resistant. So different parts of the windows. All right, so when it comes to decks and obstructing emergency egresses, you want to be very, very mindful of where the deck is situated compared to the window, because you want to make sure that it's easy for somebody to be able to essentially leave the house in the event of an emergency. So, and we'll actually get into that a little bit later in the presentation itself. So. One of the types of windows that we come across are what we technically call casement windows, or ones that you can actually crank. I always call them crank windows, but they're actually casement windows. So those are the ones that are actually hinged on one side, and you can actually swing it open, actually quite far, and then you can actually let in a lot of that fresh air. Depending on where that crank window is located, I think it's always a good idea to be cognizant of, is there some type of limiter that limits how far a crank window can actually be opened, a casement window can actually be opened. Oftentimes in my area, I'm seeing builders installing casement windows on a third floor in a single family home, and families are very sensitive to that, especially if they have small children, because they don't want that window opening up too far, especially for the kids. So they do make window control opening devices that actually can limit, again, how far out that window can actually swing open on its own. And then also the last thing that I'll comment when it comes to these casement windows is, I'm sure a lot of us have encountered this before. Just be mindful of which windows you choose to open and not open. They can be tough to close. So so common problems when it comes to inspecting the windows. So very similar to the doors, just because they're outside. It can be everything from mechanical damage around the hinges and the cranks, the weights that keep the windows permanently open, permanently shut. You want to look for painting problems, flashing defects. One of the things that I do and my team does is, when we are going through homes, we have moisture meters, and we'll actually just drag, if you will, the moisture meter around as many of the openings as we can on the inside of the home, to try to help us determine, is there any type of water that's transitioning in, just because it happens. And especially if one of us gets a sense that the majority of the windows have damage caulking, then you really need to make sure that is made to be a priority. But then also, fog pains, I think that's something that we come across quite often. And then also wood rot, just like the doors, and also water damage, just like the doors. Nothing lasts forever. And whenever you've got wood rot, that's going to attract wood destroying organisms. So it's very important to make sure everything on the exterior is sealed up as much as possible. No open holes, no gaps, no cracks. Everything's got to be sealed. Either it's with some type of powder coating, if it's like an aluminum or a metal. Wood's got to be stained. Wood's got to be painted to try to protect everything as much as possible. So window sills, I know I touched on this a little bit, but here you can see this slide is talking about the same type of concept. Just make sure that it's got a gentle pitch to it. If it doesn't have that gentle pitch to it, you definitely want to call that out and bring it to the family's attention, that particular area is going to need to be adjusted and resolved. And depending on what you're seeing and feeling, you may also want to bring to their attention that, say, hey, there may be damage around this opening. May that may need to be repaired or replaced. So window wells. So the big thing when it comes to window wells, or at least from where I'm from, is I always want to make sure that they're great on the window well itself, to help people from falling in. Naturally, you want to have a nine square foot minimum opening there. So 36 inches and 36 inches. Make sure that there's a ladder in that window, in that egress opening, in that window well. But then also, something that can actually get missed quite often is, make sure that ladder for that window well is secured to the wall, because sometimes it's not. So we want everyone to be as safe as possible. So okay, fogging windows. So fogging windows, it happens. Nothing lasts forever. But the way that we try to keep water away from the windows or from just staying inside the windows is that we have these little silica pellets and gels that are actually inside the window itself. So when the window is first installed and throughout the majority of the life of the window, the silica and the gel absorbs the air. But then over time, because it just wears out, then that's when you're going to start to see that fogging, and you're going to start to see the moisture in between the panes, right? And then that's when we know that the seal is broken and it's no longer as energy efficient as it used to be. Most of the time, the type of gas that's in between the two different panes for the windows, so the interior and exterior, is a gas called argon. But then once that seal breaks, then that's it. So it's important to know, to let the clients know that, hey, just so you know, over time, this condition is going to become more pronounced, and most likely to the point where you're not going to be able to see through it. So I think it's very important to also let the client know that if they are running if this particular house has vinyl windows, then this is the typical average lifespan of the window. So if you see two windows that are fogging or have moisture in between the panes of glass, just chances are, Mr. and Mrs. Client, that you will experience more of these windows starting to experience the same condition over time. So just be prepared and just be ready. Shutters. So homeowners should periodically check their shutter operation and observe their condition, fit, confirm the adequacy of the shutters for the purpose, which is to help control privacy, help control light, security, or just help protect against bad weather. Awnings, you want to do the same thing. Just take a peek at the system. Take a look at the attachments because it most likely gets used a lot. You want to make sure that that there's just nothing obvious there that where it's just going to become loose. Okay, so siding. So the exterior wall envelope should be designed and constructed in a manner that prevents the accumulation of water within the wall assembly system by providing a water-resistant barrier. Others will call it a water-resistant barrier behind the exterior veneer or the exterior wall covering, and a means of draining that water that collects behind the wall off, so that way water doesn't linger. So as you can see from a brick veneer standpoint, when the brick contractor originally installs that brick veneer wall, and when we say brick veneer wall, it's actually not a load bearing wall, that they leave about an inch gap in between that brick veneer wall and the OSB sheathing. The OSB sheeting, so oriented strand board, helps to keep the frame structure of the home as strong as possible. So we've got that air gap there. It's a 1 inch minimum space to not only help drain that water out, but also just keep that space there as dry as possible. Now you'll see at the very bottom of that brick veneer wall. So there's this. So in this particular diagram, they're using a steel angle brick ledge. So for the bricks to rest on. I've seen builders actually use brick ledges actually made out of concrete. But here in this particular diagram, where they're using steel. So insulation value of the siding material itself it's not considered insulative. Typical siding is not a good insulator. Siding sold with thin insulated panels can provide a little bit of insulative value, but not enough to be calculated as a significant energy savings benefit. A true insulation building materials, including fiberglass, cellulose, foam, and rigid sheet siding, that's going to be a little bit more insulative. But for houses that were constructed in the 1950s, insulated siding was considered to be a big benefit because the walls of these older homes were they weren't really insulated. But nowadays, the insulation value for siding materials is really minor compared to a modern home. with really well insulated walls. So we'll go over some of some of the different types of siding here. Um, over the next few slides. So siding, it can be formed of horizontal boards, vertical boards, shingles, and also sheet materials. But in all four cases, avoiding wind and rain infiltration through the joints is a major challenge, and that's met by overlapping, by covering or sealing the joints, or by creating an interlocking type of joint. So this chart, we won't spend too much time on it, but there's different types of siding materials will accept paint differently. Some types of materials are better at accepting paint than others. Vinyl siding doesn't really accept paint all that well. Aluminum siding has poor resistance to damage. It's always important to make sure that it's always protected. Concrete blocking, when it's prepared really well, those actually accept paint really well. So whenever you see damaged paint around the outside, especially if it's really deteriorating, you want to make sure that you bring that to your client's attention. So when it comes to solid wood, your job as an inspector is to report the condition of the wood siding. And what you want to do is look for any signs of damaged siding, cupping, purling, cracking, splitting, any other condition that could affect the performance of that particular siding system. What I've seen over the years is wood siding, even though it looks amazing when it's first installed, we as a community don't really do a really good job of just keeping up with making sure that particular cladding is always well protected. So it's important to make sure that you're bringing to your client's attention, to the family's attention, that these are the different areas that are damaged, cupping, curling, cracking. So that way they can plan accordingly. So the other two types of siding styles, if you will, when it comes to wood siding, that were actually pretty popular in the last few years: board and bat, and then also shiplap. So board and batten is how it's actually called. So they're typically vertical. So vertical planks are the boards. The narrow strips are the actual battens. And then battens cover the joints in between the boards. And then installation is always vertical and never horizontal. Now the shiplap, that's the one that's horizontal. So looks like a tongue and groove style. I know this slide says it could be horizontal or vertical. The more popular style is horizontal. One nail per every 6 inch per 6 inches for the wide boards. But I think a lot of people do paint it white for the shiplap look. Plywood siding, exterior plywood for covering. So plywood siding. So plywood siding is made of thin sheets of wood veneer plies that are glued together and arranged in layers. The grain of the layers is usually at a 90 degree to adjacent layers. So with the face layers graining running the length of the actual panel itself. The plywood only swells only when it's saturated. So very important, because it's wood and it can rot, to make sure that you're aware of what the condition is like. So again, if you see any type of damage, bowing, warping, any type of splitting, you want to bring that to the client's attention. Exterior plywood floor coverings. So homes near the ocean are almost always elevated. Underneath the house is going to be exposed, unless it's been covered with an exterior sheathing or siding or any other type of weather resistant covering. So oftentimes you're going to see you're going to see plywood. Different types of siding systems. So shingles and shakes. So the cedar shake system, I oftentimes see this type of system on a lot of high-end homes here in my area. Looks amazing, beautiful. but it does require upkeep. The shingle and shakes are popular. It's a popular siding material because they're durable. They're available in several different wood species, lengths, and types. The shingle system itself does not add strength to the house, so it's important to know there. It's the OSB sheathing that's really going to really prevent the wall assembly system from racking. That's what we call a movement from side to side. But again, just like any other type of wood product, you always want to make sure that this entire shingle and shake siding system, make sure it's always sealed. And that's gonna be the best thing that we can do to make sure that the system just lasts as long as possible. Hardboard can be affected by moisture too. Pretty much anything can be affected by moisture. It can rot, and it swells more than the natural wood. So again, the comment is, remember, no holes, no gaps, no cracks, no damage on this type of siding system. And if you do see it, call it out. So OSB siding. So OSB stands for oriented strand board. It's a form of wood wafers mixed with a waterproof resin, what that actually acts as the glue, if you will, or binder. And then it's laid flat, and then they orient it. So then it's heat applied, and then they actually form these wafers into actual panels. And then oftentimes when we're building from scratch today, you'll see an OSB type of actually board that we're actually using to actually strengthen up the wall system. We're actually transferring the strength from that OSB wall sheathing then onto the actual wall assembly system. And then particle board siding. Particle board is available as overlaid particle board siding and as a wafer board. Overlaid particle board siding has a particle board core overlaid on both sides with a resin, and naturally it's smooth. So whenever you've got two different seams of the siding system, you want to make sure that it is flashed. And oftentimes you can do that with a type of flashing called Z flashing. So it gets its name because if you look at it from a side profile, it takes the shape of the letter Z there. So the spacing should be 1/16 of an inch to an eighth of an inch between the two different sheets, and it allows for expansion and contraction. If we don't allow a gap for an expansion and contraction, then you could have some buckling and bowing going on. But it's important to make sure that you can confirm or not confirm that there's a good amount of spacing in between the two different sheets there, but then also make sure that the flashing is installed, because again, it helps to prevent water from transitioning into the home. Okay, so finished problems. So paint and stain are considered to be necessary by most people who want to extend the life of their wood siding. You've heard me say that numerous times throughout the presentation so far. Just make sure that it's in a good, ready-use condition, not damaged, not worn, and again, just ready to use. From a paint standpoint, naturally, any type of cracking, peeling, checking, any type of damage, you need to bring it to the family's attention, so that way they can put it on their to-do list. That way, less of a chance for water to transition into the home. Now, chalking. So chalking, we've all probably come across this at some point. So chalking refers to, it's like a white powdery film that's on the surface of paint. So as the paint becomes older in age and the binder slowly degrades, that actually holds it in place by ultraviolet radiation and moisture, that's when you're going to start to see that chalking there. So over time, the binder's hold on that actual pigment for the paint is actually released, and then that's when you're actually going to see that. So chalk run down the wall surface beneath, and it can cause problems with the wall's appearance, cosmetic. But once you clean it, once everything is cleaned up, then the surface can be repainted. Oftentimes, it's more of a cosmetic concern. Now, we've talked about rot, and rot has come up several different times so far. but it's important to note and pay very close attention to what is rotting around the exterior of the home. So when the moisture content of wood is above 20%, and the external temperatures are between anywhere between 40 to 115 degrees, wood rot can be found. So if you find wood rot, make sure naturally you bring that to the family's attention, but take it a step further, and let them know. So this is most likely what is creating this type of condition. It's the gap in between the corner here for the house for the siding. Oftentimes, corners will have fairly large gaps. It's the damaged caulking around the window. It's the missing flashing in this particular seam of the siding system. This is how you might be able to resolve these conditions, but then also just know that there may be more damage behind the exterior cladding that may also need to be repaired or replaced. Again, set proper expectations. That way, it's less uncomfortable conversations, months down the road. So. Now, when it comes to looking for rot, naturally, some of the things that you want to do is try to be as interactive as possible with the exterior of the home. So it could be literally just touching it, with your hand, with your finger. I think we all have probing tools, an awl or a screwdriver. See how soft it is. Sometimes you'll come across and you'll find that different types of building materials around the exterior of the home have been recently repaired, and maybe the recent repair is just paint over top. So you want to look as closely as you can on the exterior of the home. All right, aluminum and steel siding. So aluminum is among the most common siding materials. Aluminum siding can be made to look like wood, including vertical shingle and shake styles. Aluminum expands and contracts with temperature changes, so installation by a skilled installer, naturally, is very important. Aluminum does not just like the just like the actual cedar shake and cedar shake single system. It doesn't add the structural strength. It's installed over the sheathing itself. So steel siding, it's not as common. So it's not as common as aluminum. The most popular styles of steel siding looks like a smooth or textured bevel wood siding. They do come in a lot of different colors. Installation of the steel siding also requires special skills and tools. So it's also important to note that the grounding, so grounding the metal siding system, aluminum and steel siding, naturally, it can conduct electricity. So depending on where you are, grounding may be it may be a requirement. Just make sure that you're checking with your local authority. They call it AHJ, but just check with your local authority as to whether or not that exterior siding system needs to be grounded there. Okay. Vinyl siding. Where I'm located, vinyl siding is actually one of the most common types of siding that we'll see here in my area. So it's important to know that when the siding system is installed, that nails cannot be driven in too tightly. You want to provide a half-inch gap also in between the nailing strips, so that way the siding system can actually expand and contract. And if for some reason, if the siding system cannot expand and contract, then that's when you're going to see like the buckling, the waviness on the siding system. And whenever you have a buckling system, a wavy system, or where different end pieces are starting to gap, that's where you can possibly have waters start to transition into the home because of the open hole, essentially, if you will, that condition is going to create over time, or just more susceptible to wind damage, and then it lifts the siding, and then all of a sudden now you have a missing piece. So Lap joints naturally should be staggered. Two joints should not line should never line up vertically to try to prevent water as much as possible from transitioning into the home. Building paper or house wrap should be installed behind the vinyl siding system. Where I'm located here in Maryland, we're pretty much using house wrap, either by Kingspan or Tyvek. Call it either, so it's a WRB system. Either some people will call it a water resistant barrier, others will call it a weather resistive barrier, but something has to be behind that siding system there, in order to try to help prevent water from transitioning inwards. Okay, so SIPs, structural insulated panels. These are high performance building panels used in floors, walls, roofs for residential as well as light commercial buildings. So SIPs are manufactured under factory controlled conditions. The panels are typically made by sandwiching a core of rigid foam plastic insulation between two structural skins of oriented strand board, OSB. Other skin materials can be used for specific purposes, but these panels are designed to be part of the support of the structural support members for the outer walls. They're used in post and beam construction and can form a complete wall system with an exterior wall covering, insulation, and interior wall surface. So the result is a building system that's very strong, energy efficient, and it's also cost effective. So building with SIPs saves a lot of time, money, and then also just effort. Brick and stone. So we all know brick and stone, very durable, very strong, lasts a very long time, attractive, comes in a lot of different textures, types, colors. It doesn't burn, it doesn't rot. Um, let's see here. Other types of common practices for brick is using it as a facing material. Full-size bricks are commonly laid front of either so in the front of either a concrete block or a framed wall. In that particular case, when it's done, then that's a brick veneer wall, right? Because it's not the actual wall itself. Very heavy, and it also requires support with the footing and lintel. So just like we were talking about in a few of the previous slides, got to make sure that it's actually supported. Metal ties are actually used to connect the brick to the house framing system. So it's important to make sure that those are there. It's important to make sure that there's at least an inch gap in between that brick veneer wall and the actual sheathing system itself to try to help water drain away, make sure that water doesn't retain behind the wall. And then you've got the stone option as well. So stone been used for centuries as an exterior cladding, just like brick. It's very durable. Comes in a lot of different types of a lot of different styles, sizes. And then we also make stone veneer now. So, all right, stucco and ephes. So different styles. You can have a 2-coat, you can have a 3-coat. So a couple different things to look out for when it comes to stucco and ephes, and naturally, as I'm sure you already know, everything is water related when it comes to this particular siding system. You absolutely want to make sure that there isn't any cracking or any damage, or any pieces missing on the system, because if water is able to get behind the system, it can become damaged really quickly, and that's when you can come across the bowing and the bending, and just the advanced deterioration of the system itself. Now, depending on the type of system, if there is a metal lath in place that helps to support the exterior coat, excuse me, you also want to make sure that metal lath is not exposed. Got to make sure that it's not exposed, because otherwise it's going to compromise the actual structure. So scratch coats are also known as the base coat. Those are 3/8 in thickness. The next layer coating is also 3/8 in thickness, called a brown coat. The finish coat is going to be is going to be thinner. What 1/8 is typically the minimum coat there, but you can see how many different types of coatings are going on top, to really try to make this type of system serviceable for many years. Um, okay, let's see here. I'm just going to go through some of that stucco and EFS. Asbestos. So asbestos cement-based siding. So as we know, asbestos is something that we want to be very cognizant and aware of. Asbestos and cement were first combined in the United States in the early 1900s to form an innovative new type of building material. So asbestos cement, it's a composite material that consists of cement reinforced with asbestos fibers. Asbestos cement siding shingles can be made to imitate the appearance of wood siding shingles. So that's also something that's important to know. The maintenance of asbestos cement siding materials include performance visual inspections to evaluate its condition, keeping the siding clean, making minor repairs as necessary. So why is it important to note its condition? Because if this type of system is damaged, meaning friable, then that's when it can actually negatively impact us, right? So asbestos cement is very brittle. It has very little resistance to impact, so again it can become damaged very easily. So it's also important to know that if you think that there is a home with possible asbestos siding, I think something that's also very important to bring to the family's attention is proximity of bushes and trees to that siding system. We want to keep all the vegetation back as much as we can to try to help prevent the possibility of some of that vegetation damaging the siding system. And then naturally, just like anything else on the exterior of the home, look for anything on that system, cracks, open holes, missing parts of the system, in order so that way you can bring it to the family's attention. So also, as I think we all know, if the asbestos cement siding material is not disturbed, no hazard exists and no precautions are required. Again, it's only when it becomes friable is that when we need to pay attention to that material itself. Okay. Now, when it comes to the exterior, so more of the siding. So naturally, when we are installing fasteners onto the siding system, we want to make sure that these fasteners are driven flush or flush onto the siding system. You never want something overdriven because that could allow water to transition through. Whenever you have any type of exterior hose bib, or when you ever have an exterior vent, you want to make sure that there are trim blocks. They're typically like a white PVC material. You want to make sure that there are trim blocks around that particular opening. And you want to make sure that on the top of the trim block that you have Z flashing, right? That one particular shape that we were referencing to help prevent water from transitioning through that opening and then into the home. I think another thing that's also important to know is that I think the majority of the manufacturers do not, so we want to make sure that we're not caulking the top, the top of that Z flashing there. But then also when you're looking at the siding system when it relates to the roof, you want to make sure that there's a clearance in between the siding system and the roofing shingles of at least 2 inches. And this is something that I think we all see from time to time. Siding systems that are too close to the shingles. And as you know, if the siding system is too close to the shingles, then there is a greater chance of water actually starting to wick up through the bottom of the siding system and then create damage. So that's something important to know. So same concept also when it comes to the siding system and stairs. You also want to have a minimum 2-inch clearance there to try to keep that system away from water. All right. So hardy plank lap siding. So maintenance recommendations for hardy. So regular cleaning. Clean the siding annually with a garden hose and soft brush. Naturally, avoid high pressure washers because it can damage the siding. Inspect the seals. Periodically check and maintain caulking around the windows and doors and other penetrations. Naturally, we want the paint to be in a good, just ready to use condition. You're typically repainting the siding every 10 to 15 years or so. Make sure you're using a paint that's meant for the outside. Inspect for damage. So cracks, chips, loose boards, but then also gutters. We want to make sure that the gutters are able to direct water away from the home. We want to keep the water off of our building materials as much as possible. So there are different types of profiles that you can actually choose from. That you can actually choose from when it comes to this type of system. But it's important to know that regardless of the profile that you pick, that they are heavy, right? And they're also not prone to uplift by wind. Oftentimes, we'll see these types of excuse me, these types of systems installed in really nice high-end homes, just because they're just known to last a much longer time. There are also another option that you could actually see from time to time is an asphalt shingle siding. That they are sometimes used. These shingles used are the same used for roofing systems. So when the roof covering asphalt shingles are installed as siding, they need to be installed. They need to be installed differently. So the self-sealing tabs of asphalt shingles will not function because the shingles are installed vertically. The overlying shingle will not adhere to the shingle below. Roofing cement. So roofing cement is commonly used to secure the layers of shingles to each other. Loose shingle tabs are susceptible to naturally being blown or torn off by the wind. So just like a lot of the other systems around the exterior of the home, make sure that you're checking if you do come across one of these types of systems, or this type of system. Interact with it a little bit. See if anything is loose. But then also naturally, if one section of that system is missing, you want to bring that to the family's attention. Also look for any cracks on the system, any shingle that's torn. You also want to bring that to the family's attention. So masonry exterior wall coverings, advantages of the masonry siding system. Naturally, because it's so strong, it provides good fire protection. Brick and stone and can increase the thermal mass of the building, which can increase the comfort in the heat and of summer and in the dead of winter. It can also be effectively used for passive solar applications as well. And it's also these masonry walls are also just more resistant to projectiles too. So disadvantages for masonry exterior wall coverings, frost damage. It can deteriorate masonry exterior walls. This type of damage is common with certain types of bricks. Masonry, it's a very heavy building material, as we all know, requires strong support from underneath, right? That ledge, in order to make sure that to try to help prevent settling and cracking. Cracking is as much as possible. Now, you may also come across concrete blocks on the exterior, blocks of cinder concrete called cinder blocks or breeze blocks, as well as traditional concrete blocks. They're referred to as concrete masonry blocks, or some others you might hear call them CMUs. So they differ from brick units in a few different ways. They're usually much larger than bricks. Cinder and concrete blocks typically have much lower rates of water absorption. And they're typically used as a structural core component for brick veneer walls. Manufactured stone is also becoming, or at least where I'm located, is also becoming very, very popular as well. It's it looks very, very similar to the real thing. It's typically made from concrete. Not So it's recreated. They're trying to mimic nature, and they're doing by recreating it by using molds and aggregates and pigments to try to recreate that look. But to the untrained inspector's eye, there may be no obvious visual difference between to a veneer in an actual manufactured stone. That's how good they've actually gotten with that. So now, one of the ways that you can tell whether or not, let's say, like a brick wall is actually load bearing, or it's a veneer cladding, is take a look at how they've actually positioned the bricks. So the brick, when it's actually laid horizontally, the technical term is they actually call that a stretcher. And then what you'll oftentimes find is when it's an actual load bearing wall, they'll actually, if you can picture this, they'll actually turn that brick around 180 degrees and then install the brick that way. And then when you would see it turned around like that, they actually call that a header. So when you see headers being installed on a brick wall, that's a pretty good indicator that you're looking at a load bearing wall. All right, so the next few slides that we're going to review together, the end result is all about poor moisture management. It's important to make sure that we can control and direct the water away from the home as far away as possible. Whenever we don't do that effectively, then we can have conditions that are not desirable, such as problems with the masonry exterior. So there's different types of settlement when it comes to masonry walls. So one is what we call uniform settlement, meaning that the masonry it's settling evenly with no cracks. A tipping type of settlement, most of the time there's usually no cracking that's actually associated with this, but it kind of leans to the left or leans to the right. And then the other type of settlement that can happen when we're not doing a great job at managing the moisture and directing the moisture around the home is what we call differential settlement. Oftentimes it is associated with cracking, and they call it differential settlement because different sections of the system are settling at different rates. That's why they call it a differential there. So, but all caused by moisture essentially. So, very important to make sure that moisture is being managed. Now, inspection tips for mortar joints. So when you are inspecting the exterior, make sure that you're paying attention to the condition of the mortar joints. Deteriorated mortar may allow water to penetrate the wall naturally. So make sure that you're checking the joints for any type of damage. You can oftentimes accomplish this by using a screwdriver. Drag gently, drag the screwdriver along the mortar there, and then see how loose it is. But also different types of tips for inspecting for moisture. So remember, just like for a lot of the other systems around the home, moisture is the enemy of masonry, right? Because it just damages everything. and masonry is no different. So closely inspect areas near the bottom of the walls, wall penetrations, right? So that's through wall openings, so like large holes, for the vents or for like a hose bib, um, behind downspout pipes and below gutters, at attached handrails, below windows, behind really thick vegetation where water may actually just be held up against the wall for an exterior for an extended period of time. Now, whenever you're seeing this white substance we most of the time encounter on the inside of the home. Whenever you see this white substance, it's called efflorescence. And it oftentimes occurs on masonry, particularly brick. You can also see it on CMUs. And this happens when water moves through the wall and brings out salts to the surface that are not commonly bound as part of the concrete. So is efflorescence in itself a defect? I would say no. But it's a handy reminder that water is sitting around the home. So you want to make sure that when you do encounter it, um, go back to walking around the exterior of the house and just think to yourself, did I see any conditions that would explain just water lingering around this foundation? So are the gutters daylighting? So that's the point where the water leaves the gutter system. Are the gutters daylighting the water as far away as possible? Is there enough of a roof overhang to keep the water a little bit further away from the home? Were the gutters clear so that way they're not overflowing? Is the sump pump drain, which helps to keep the home and basement dry, is that also daylighting its water as far away as possible from the home? Oftentimes you'll hear 20 feet away from the home is how far away water should daylight from that sump pump system. Um, so when you have moisture challenges, you're going to come across also some possible structural challenges from the walls themselves, but then also from the foundation. So masonry bowing. Inspectors sometimes find masonry veneer walls that show signs of bowing. Bowing occurs when a masonry veneer wall projects outwards, right, away from the wood framing or masonry structure behind the veneer. And oftentimes you'll find bowing on older buildings. Masonry veneer walls do have the metal ties as we were mentioning earlier, but when you are inspecting the exterior of the home, especially when it's an older home, you do want to look for signs of bowing on the brick, but then also leaning. You want to make sure that the walls aren't leaning as well, because when you do have those types of conditions, indicative that there's something water related. Now, cracks cracks on foundations, it's impossible to avoid, right? That's what concrete does. It cracks, but we do need to be cognizant of where the cracks are located, because if a crack is centered or is near a weak point in the foundation, such as a window, a door, or a beam pocket, then there is a chance where even though the crack is not more than a quarter of an inch in width, it can still allow water to transition into the home. I've seen it over the years where you could have a crack that's an eighth of an inch in width. You could have a crack that is 1/32 of an inch in width. But because it's centered around a weak point in the foundation, again, those types of openings, it can allow water to transition through. But you'll see when you have cracks that are more than a quarter of an inch in width, that's typically indicative of a foundation that's actually moving, and you want to pay really close attention to it. But again, whenever you're seeing cracking on the foundation, you want to, if you can, you want to keep that in the back of your mind. And then when you are inside the home, go to those areas where you saw the cracks, and use your thermal imaging camera, use your moisture meter, and try to and see if you can if you can determine if water is transitioning inwards, because it does happen. It does happen from time to time. But then also, cracking can happen on a concrete surface if it's just not if it was just not installed correctly. So um, it does happen. So masonry foundations and settlements. So indications of differential settlement include, so if you see vertical distortion or cracking on masonry walls, warped interior and exterior openings, slow floors, and sticking doors and windows. So what does this mean? So not all cracks are created equal, right? So if you were to see a crack on the exterior, make sure, again, you are not only going to the opposite end on the interior of the home, looking for signs of water transitioning through, but also check to see if it's more just cosmetic or if it's actually structural in nature. If windows and doors in that particular area, if they're hard to open and close, that is a sign, that is indicative that you may actually have something there, and it's not just a normal crack. If the floors are sloped, that's also, or uneven, or there's like a low spot, and you have a sticking door, and you have a window that's hard to open, or a door that opens on its own, that's a sign that you may actually have something there. And again, it's not just a typical crack that just needs to be sealed. So other causes of settlement: soil consolidation under the footings, soil shrinkage. You could have soil swelling, soil heaving. Um, a lot of different soil conditions can actually contribute to foundation movement and foundation cracking. But oftentimes, the type of soil movement is usually tied to a moisture management condition that also needs to be resolved. So that's why it's so important to also pay attention to the actual grading of the home itself. And we're going to get to that a little bit later in the report. So shrinkage cracks. So shrinkage cracks are typically cracks that in the building construction world that we would define as anything that's less than a quarter of an inch in width. The cracks are usually, they typically form during the builder's first during the building's first year. In existing buildings, they will appear as old cracks and exhibit no other further movement there. So although such cracks are often mistaken for settlement cracks, shrinkage cracks can usually occur in the middle third of the wall, and the footer beneath them remains intact. So shrinkage cracks, typically by the nature of what they are, they're very rarely serious in nature. But you should still, again, as mentioned earlier, pay attention to where they're located, because they may need to be sealed, especially if the crack is going all the way through the wall. So when you have sweeping or horizontal cracks, that is definitely a sign that you will want to look very, very closely, not at just the grading of the home itself, but then also take a look very closely at the windows, door, walls, especially in that area of the home, and also on all levels. Oftentimes, whenever you see like a sweeping or horizontal crack, that typically comes from what we call hydrostatic pressure. So that's the ground actually pushing on the foundation the foundation wall itself. And that's something that we don't want naturally. So whenever you see that, also make sure that you're noting and bringing to your client's attention that in most cases you're going to find that the ground needs the pitch of the ground, so the grade needs to be adjusted there. Uh, so leaning of walls, we've talked about this several different times, but that's also something that's very, very important to know. Very, very similar, I would say, in my opinion, to horizontal cracking, just because it's indicative of poor moisture management around the home. An unstable base essentially is going to create those types of conditions. But especially when we're looking and assessing older homes, you want to make sure that you've got a good understanding of which walls or foundation sections of the foundation wall, if any, are bowing, have horizontal cracking, are leaning in either direction. And the same thing goes for chimneys as well. I don't. This we're not going to be talking too much about chimneys today, but chimneys can also lean. It's important to make sure that we know from a verticality standpoint that those chimneys are the brick chimneys are not leaning. So soffits and fascias, you can have wood rot around the soffit or the fascia, and it could be caused by a roof leak at the edge, roof penetrations that are causing leaks, drip edge problems, uh, poor flashing, missing flashing, damaged flashing, ice dams. I think important because we're coming up on the colder months of the year. It's important to know and bring to the family's attention if ice dams are present. So essentially, if you're seeing icicles hanging off of the roof, excuse me, off of the roof, there would be your ice dam. And as pretty as it is to look at, what we don't want is for ice to actually start traveling upwards underneath the shingles. And as it starts to travel upwards, it's gonna start moving closer and closer and closer to the center section of the roof. It's going to be warmer there as opposed to the eaves, right? So then that's when all of a sudden the ice will start to melt because you're moving towards the center of the warmer section, and then all of a sudden now we have water transitioning. We have water transitioning into the home. So ice dams do need to be noted, and the conditions creating the ice dams need to be resolved. Okay. All right, so the wall assembly system. So we talked about this very, very briefly. You heard me say water resistant barrier. Others will call it a water resistive barrier, but it's essentially structural components naturally can be adversely affected by moisture. So the job or the whole purpose of a water resistive barrier is to try to prevent water from transitioning through and then into the home. The function of that barrier is also allow vapor to move through the wall, to move through that wall assembly system as well. So oftentimes it comes in the form of a wrap. Sometimes you'll see paper being used, but most of the time you will see it in a wrap fashion. So no matter what product is used, house wrap or building paper, neither will work effectively if it's not installed correctly, right? So installing house wrap incorrectly could actually do more harm than not using it at all. House wrap is often thought of and installed as if it were just an air retarder, but a house wrap will channel water and collect it, whether the installer intends it or not. So, and it can lead to water damage if the house wrap is installed in a manner that doesn't allow the channeled water to exit out of the wall assembly system. So it's very, very important to follow the manufacturer instructions depending on which one is actually being used. Now, there is actually a difference between waterproofing and actually damp proofing. Oftentimes we find inspectors using the terms interchangeably, but that's not correct. So waterproofing and damp proofing, they both relate to moisture protection, right? They're often they're not always incorrectly used as mentioned. So damp proofing doesn't provide the same degree of moisture protection as waterproofing. Building codes typically require damp proofing of foundation walls that retain earth and enclose interior spaces and floors below grade. So the damp proofing should be applied from the top of the footing to the finished grade. So dam proofing for masonry walls involves applying a Portland cement parging to the exterior of the wall and then applying a coating on top. The use of waterproofing measures is reserved for conditions where a high water table, so here's the difference, is where a high water table or other severe soil water conditions are known to exist. So waterproof does not, so as we all know, waterproof does not mean watertight. It simply involves the application of a more impermeable membrane on the foundation wall itself. So an inspection tip at the top of the foundation wall that is exposed, you may see the top of the parge coat or the top edge of the black colored bituminous dam proofing. The parge coat is not the dam proofing feature, but it's the surface upon which the dam proofing is applied. So I hope that helps. And then also you could come across every once in a while, you could come across permanent wood foundations. So permanent wood foundation. So while traditional basement walls are made from masonry materials such as concrete and stone, um, it is important to know that you could, excuse me, you could come across a permanent wood foundation. It's also known as a PWF. But when pressure treated wood was developed in the 60s, it did become possible for wood to be used in foundation walls without being prohibitively vulnerable to damage from insects and moisture. By the 1970s, PWFs were used. So when you're walking around the exterior, just like anything else, remember open holes, no gaps, no cracks. But for the wood walls, you always also want to make sure that you're aware of how close that wall is to the ground, right? You want to make sure that there's at least 6 inches of exposed foundation compared to the actual siding system itself. That way, less of a chance for water to actually come in contact with that exterior cladding. So we talked about this also in a few of the other previous slides. This one, it says inspection tips on the siding system. It says look for an inch of clearance. It should be 2 inches of clearance there. But it should be really easy when you're on the roof. If you think it's safe, we all know we're not required to be on a roof, but if you think it's safe and you're on the roof, kneel down and to see if you can get a sense for how close the siding system is to the roof, and if it's too close, you definitely want to bring that to the family's attention, so that way they know to have that adjusted. And also, as mentioned, so dense vegetations of bushes and trees, you want to make sure that they're all trimmed back. That way, less of a chance for water for an extended period of time be held up against the actual wall exterior cladding. Less of a chance for damage. Now pick tests. That's why we carry awls, and that's why we carry screwdrivers. So if you're when you're walking around the exterior, give it a little poke, right? Probe the wood, see if it's soft, and then bring it to the family's attention, because it's not always going to be obvious. It's not always going to be obvious that the wood is in need of repair or replacement. So just like siding, the same thing applies for decks. The decks need to be elevated off the ground high enough in order to make sure that that it's not too close and it's susceptible to water damage. Now, the other thing that's also very important, so on the left diagram there, you can see how you've got a wood beam that's resting on a beam pocket. So it's also important to make sure that wood beam there is also wrapped in a type of material that is water resistant. Otherwise, if that wood beam is coming in contact with that concrete foundation, over time, as water travels upwards and comes in contact with that wood, that action is called capillary action. It's going to damage the beam over time. So you'll see builders. Most of the builders will actually wrap their beams in some type of flashing tape in order to protect that beam. And if for some reason, especially if you're in a new construction house and you don't see any type of barrier between the wood beam and that concrete beam pocket, you definitely want to call that out and bring it to the builder's attention. Okay, so water intrusion, or I like to call it water transitioning into the home. So moisture and water vapor move in and out of the house in three different ways: with air currents, diffusion through building materials, and by heat transfer. So of these three, air movement accounts for more than 98% of all water vapor movement in building cavities. So air naturally moves from a high pressure area to a lower one by path of least resistance, or easiest path possible generally. So that's through any available hole, crack in the building envelope. And that's why you've heard me say numerous times throughout our time here together this evening: no open holes, no gaps, no cracks. Because if you have a higher moisture retention inside the home, higher humidity in the home, it's going to lead to other undesirable conditions, right? Higher moisture retention can lead to possible biological growth, and it can also damage building materials as well. So flashing of wall components. So we all know. So flashing is how we try to prevent, keyword prevents, water from transitioning into the home. Nothing is ever waterproof. Only water resistance in the right circumstances, in the right conditions. Even when we do everything correctly, water can still transition in. So it's important to make sure everything is flashed as well as they can be. So flashing around windows, understanding and inspecting the flashing. So you'll see the illustration and the actual detail of how to actually flash the windows. So you would actually flash the bottom first, and then the sides, and then the top in a shingle-like fashion around the fins. And then that's what's going to try to make the window opening as water resistant as possible. Now, what also a lot of the builders will do is, before they even go to that particular stage, they'll actually take. Oftentimes they use like a stretch flashing tape now, and they'll actually wrap the entire bottom opening of the window the pan with some type of like stretch tape there to really try to protect the bottom sill. And then once they've taped around all four sides, they'll even take it another step, and they'll actually install diagonal flashing tape on both the top left and top right corners. And sometimes the manufacturers even want installed that way per their plant details, to really try to prevent water from transitioning through. So if you are at a home where you do see windows at this particular stage, very important to make sure that you're looking at the flashing as much as you can. And then if you're able to, try to take a look at the fins as well, and make sure that those fins aren't damaged. Okay, so there's different types. So there's different types of caulking, right? Some are used for the inside of the home, some are used for the outside of the home. Some will actually be labeled as 100% waterproof, even though I don't like that type of description. Nothing is ever 100% waterproof. Some will last for a very short period of time. Others will last for a very long extended period of time, such as silicone caulking. It could be 20 plus years. One of the things that we always remind all of our clients is they need to pay very, very, very close attention to the type of caulking that they're getting from the hardware store, just because all the tubes of caulking, they all look the same. So make sure you're getting the right tube of caulking for the right application. That way you can set yourself up. You can set yourself up for success. So Kickout flashing. So kickout flashing, that's associated with the roofing system, right? And that's where, so the kickout flashing needs to be installed anywhere where a roof and an exterior wall intersect. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to essentially kick, that's how they get the kick out flashing term, kick the water back into the gutter there, as opposed to having water come in contact with the siding, but then also roll over the side and then also start coming in contact there and falling, daylighting essentially too close to the foundation wall. So oftentimes what I found over the years is kickout flashing is also quite it's quite loose. It can be blown away quite easily with wind. So it's very important to note the presence or lack thereof of kickout flashing, and whenever you don't see it. So again, it's where a roof and exterior wall intersect, that the kickout flashing is installed to help keep the water in the gutter. I have actually seen it numerous times over the years where missing kickout flashing is the direct culprit of water transitioning into a basement, where it just sits and collects over time. And then because the home has been in existence for a very long time, and it doesn't have it never had the damp proofing because that wasn't a thing back then, or the damp proofing has worn away. Now just a lot of the water collecting over time is now transitioning into the home. And it's the same thing for HVAC condensation drain lines too. As minor as it may seem, an HVAC condensate drain line is daylighting right next to the home. I've seen that actual drain pipe be the culprit for allowing for allowing water to transition into the home. So that's why it's so important to make sure that the grading system around the entire home is designed in such a way where it can direct the water away from the home and not allow the water to sit. So you're supposed to have 6 inches of fall for the first 10 feet to keep the water away from the home. And as mentioned in previous slides, if we're not achieving that, then over time we're going to have undesirable conditions such as leaning walls, bowing walls, horizontal cracks. You could in different types of structural conditions that need to be resolved. Just because we're not being aware of where we're directing the water. So foundation drainage. So drains are usually placed around houses to remove the groundwater that may be adjacent to the foundation wall. So such drains prevent or help prevent leakage into the interior space below grade. So drainage pipes or tiles are important in areas that have heavy to moderate rainfall in soils with low permeability rates. So the drain tile system is going to typically, not always, is going to be typically tied to what we call a sump pump system. So that sump pump system is essentially it's a well. They actually call it a crock, but it's a well that's going to sit in the floor for the basement, and then it collects all that water that the drain tile system helps to collect. It looks like a big gutter extension, and it's got perforated holes in the top. Um, and then and then as that well fills, or the water fills in the well crock, then there's a motor that'll turn on, and then it's going to pump all the water away from the home. But oftentimes you'll come across where the water is being daylighted right back onto the foundation again. So that defeats the whole purpose of trying to trying to keep the area around the home as dry as possible. So if you see a sump pump drain daylighting pretty much right next to the foundation again, you also bring that to the family's attention that they need to daylight it further away, and ideally not always possible, but ideally it's at least a good 20 feet away. So now overhangs and projections. So very important to know about the overhangs and projections, because that's what's helping to also keep the water away from the foundation. So roof overhangs, such as porch roofs, Overhanging floors provide a primary means to deflect rainwater away from the house. Thus, the potential for water penetration through siding, windows, indoors to a certain extent is it's minimized. It's minimized. So the protection of roof overhangs increases with increasing overhang widths naturally. So here's a pretty good illustration about daylighting. Here you can see with this illustration how in an ideal world you want the water to daylight, so the point where the water leaves the gutter system 4, if not 6 feet away from the home, to try to help prevent water from sitting around the foundation itself. Oftentimes you'll see builders daylighting the water right back onto the foundation with a splash block underneath. And that's their entry level installation, if you will. And the recommendation needs to be, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you need to further upgrade and enhance the system that the builder gave you and daylight the water further away from the home. So common problems with with guttering are related to installation maintenance. Home inspectors, as most of us are aware, we're not required to check if they're properly if the components have been properly sized and installed. Sizing is beyond the scope of what we do as a home inspector. But home inspectors can check to see whether the guttering is appropriately sloped toward adequately sized downspouts and whether the discharge is directing water away from the building perimeter. All right, inspection of drainage slopes. Backfill and site grading problems naturally make for wet basements. So in one survey of basement leakage problems, about 85% of the moisture problems appeared only after rainstorms or melting snow, which is a strong indication of the importance of site drainage in preventing foundation moisture problems. Of these incidences of basement leakage problems, about 40% were associated with improper surface grading. 25% were related to improper downspout drainage, and another 25% were associated with settling of the backfill. That resulted in improper surface grading over the passage of time, typically within the first year of construction. So thus the majority of the basement water problems are associated with backfill and site grading. Let's see. So sump pumps. So we were talking about sump pumps just a couple slides ago. So as mentioned, if possible, you can't always achieve this, but you want to daylight the water 20 at least 20 feet away from the building or the home. Water is not supposed to be draining back into the home. Recycling water places unnecessary strain on the pump. So recycling water meaning all that water that the drain tile collected and then directed it into the crock. If you're not daylighting the water far enough away, it's just constantly running. Some pumps, if I remember correctly, typically last on average anywhere between 8 to 10 years. So if you're not daylighting the water from the system as far away as possible, you're also putting that unneeded strain on the sump pump system, and you're just going to wear and tear it out much faster. Naturally, you do not want to drain the water from the sump pump system onto a neighbor's property. Many jurisdictions do not permit residential runoff to be pumped into public sewer systems. Pumped water should never drain into a resident's septic system, especially during heavy rain. Septic drain fields can become saturated and will struggle to handle the normal flow of water from the house. So additional water from that sump pump system is also going to just create unneeded conditions with that septic system. So look around the entire site for the presence of springs, standing water, saturated or boggy ground, a higher water table, or any other type of drainage that could actually affect the actual surface drainage of the home. Now, just know that just like dishwashers, because I do hear this from time to time, just like dishwashers, I believe you can get sump pump systems that'll be quieter or louder than others. They can be loud, So from time to time, you actually may hear a client commenting about the overall decibel level of the actual sump pump system itself, and they'll ask you what to actually do about it. Okay, so landscaping, I think we've touched on this several different times throughout our time together so far. Just making sure not just the branches and then the bushes needing to be trimmed further back, so that way we don't have water being held up against the home for an extended period of time. But then also make sure that you don't have any large branches overhanging the house. Any type of branches overhanging the house coming from large trees can be very heavy, and if those branches fall, we don't want those branches falling onto our client's home. So just be cognizant and aware there. Fences are not part of a home inspection. If you're looking at the fence, I think one of the things that just be cognizant and aware of, take a look and see how old that system may be. You're looking for rot, right? You're looking for damage. The more rotting wood that you have, the more it's going to attract wood destroying insects to the home, and that's something that's just not desirable. All right, ramps. If you come across a ramp, there are three main points to check. Slope, we don't want anything too steep, right? Landings, we need an adequate space around the landing itself. That way we can just get around. And then handrails, we want those handrails to be graspable. And it also needs to be continuous. That way, it's just easier for us to be able to keep our balance as we ascend and descend the ramp system. So moving on to stairways. So that railing height, most places want the railing height to be 34 to 38 inches. New construction, that's typically they're typically within that range. I was actually at a house the other day where the builder actually installed their railing inside the home, leading to the basement too low, and then it was flagged by the municipality. Both actually handrails leading to the second floor and then to the basement, and then the builder only did one of the two. I saw that they forgot to do the other one. So again, just like on the exterior, you want it to be continuous, and you also want it to be easily graspable. Let's see here, from risers and treads. I think the big one from a riser and tread standpoint is just make sure that they're relatively even in terms of height. We don't want to create any type of tripping concerns. Now, when it comes to guards, we want to make sure that the minimum height for a guard or a railing system is 36 inches. These guards in the railing systems, ladder styles, which is what's being illustrated here, are actually becoming more popular, especially in the higher end homes, or the homes that have just been freshly reimagined. If you do see a ladder style railing system, I think it's important to just bring it to the family's attention, especially if they have small children, or that they have family members or friends that have small children, to just remind them to, hey, just be careful, because that looks like a ladder. And we want everyone to be safe. So spheres. So we don't want the openings in stair risers in a stair system to be too high, right? Predominantly concerned for small children. So we don't want the opening to be any higher or any greater than 4 inches. Underneath the railing system, we don't want that space to be any greater than 6. And then the spacing in between the balusters, there you can see no greater than 4 inches today. And again, predominantly a concern for small children or little ones. Handrail grips, we talked about just making sure that they're graspable. Oftentimes for decks, you'll see a top railing, but there's no banister. that top railing doesn't count. We need something to actually hold on to as we ascend and descend the actual stair system itself. So basement walkouts. So when you're inspecting a walkout, you want to check for the following. Are there any cracks in the walls of the walkout stairway? Leaning. Is anything leaning? So those wing walls are the is there any leaning or bowing of the walls? Is there any cracking or heaving on the steps? Are there any cracking, settlement, heaving of the landing at the bottom of the stairway? Presence of drainage at the bottom of the stairway. So we need some type of drain, right? That'll then most likely lead the water into the sump pump system. And is there surface drainage around the walkout? But then also when you're looking at the drain, just make sure that there aren't any signs of failure or clogging. Because if it looks clogged or if there just isn't a drain at the bottom, then you most certainly want to bring that to your client's attention, because it's just going to collect, and then it's going to eventually just transition into the home, which is what we don't want. Okay, inspecting decks. So decks are important to look at, just because there aren't a lot of decks that are actually 100% ready to use. Some interesting facts about deck failures. Decks should not be located where they might obstruct septic tank accesses, underground ground fuel storage tanks, wellheads, or buried power lines. More deck collapse conditions actually happen in the summer than during all the other seasons combined. Why is that? Because everyone is congregating outside when it's nice, and oftentimes where are they congregating? Around the rails, right? So that's typically where it happens, not close to the home, but actually the furthest section away from the home. Um, Almost every deck collapse occurs while the decks were occupied or under a heavy snow load. There's no correlation between a deck failure and whether the deck was built with or without a permit. There is no correlation between whether a deck failure and whether the deck was built by a homeowner or a professional contractor. There's a slight correlation between the deck failure and the age of the deck. About 90% of deck collapses occurred as a result of the separation of the deck from the house via the ledger board, allowing the deck to swing away from the house. Very rare for a deck floor joist to break mid-span. Many more injuries are actually the result of a rail failure, again, because everyone congregates around the rails, right? Than a complete deck collapse. Deck stairs are notorious for lacking graspable handrails. And many do-it-yourself homeowners and even contractors don't believe that that rail infill spacing code applies to decks. So here you can see how the image below depicts an evenly distributed deck load, but oftentimes the deck load in reality is actually distributed with that top diagram there, because again, why is the deck load heavier further away from the house? Because that's where the railing is. Um, let's see here. So again, girders and beams for decks, important to make sure that they are elevated off the ground, to make sure that particular system lasts as long as possible. The closer it is to the ground, just the shorter the lifespan, it's going to have. The most common, again, cause of deck collapses are ledgers that are pulling away from the actual home itself. It's important to make sure that you have the appropriate amount of the appropriate amount of lag screws or through bolts. The way that you would actually try to calculate that there are enough of those lag screws or bolts, according to InterNACHI, is so the on-center spacing of ledger fasteners in inches. You would do 100 divided by the joist length in feet. So any deck with substantially fewer ledger fasteners than that's recommended by InterNACHI's formula may be considered unsafe. So it's important to have a good amount of fasteners installed onto that ledger, because it's carrying a lot of the weight of the deck. Now, it's also important. You can see in this illustration there are joist hangers here for the decking system. Very, very, very important to make sure that those joists are seated are seated in those hangers properly, so there are no gaps in between the bottom of the joist and the hanger itself. You also want to make sure that any available circular hole is actually is filled in with the appropriate nail, unless specified by the plan details. But then also the diagonal shear nail holes, oftentimes as described by the manufacturer Simpson Strong Tie, it's important if you can try to determine if those shear nail lengths are the correct nail lengths. Oftentimes, I'll see that the joist is actually not sitting flush to the ledger. So I can actually look behind the deck joist, and you'll actually come across that you can actually see the tips of the nails. And whenever you can see the tip of the nail, that means the incorrect nail length was used. So the installation is not as strong as what the manufacturer intended it to be. So that's important to know, because oftentimes you will come across either missing shear nails, or you'll just come across the incorrect nails being used. Um, let's see. So in terms of electrical receptacles, as of 2008, the NEC, the National Electrical Code, does require at least one receptacle outlet on decks that are 20 on decks that are 20 feet 20 square feet or larger. So important to know. And then we've got the garage here. So when you're inspecting the garage, now that we're moving on to the garage, there's certain concerns that are particular to a garage that are different than other different systems or components of the home. And that's typically centered around firewalls, openings, fire rated doors, the attic access, garage door, and then also location for combustible appliances. So reason being is we want to try to give ourselves as much time as possible in order to get out, right? We want to slow down the spread of fire. So we want the door to be a fire rated door. We need it to be a certain we want it to be a certain thickness. It needs to be thick enough. We don't want a pane of glass on that door, right? We want that door to be able to self close on its own. We want we don't want any type of ducting being supplied into the garage itself, because that can allow carbon monoxide from the car to transition into the home itself. Sometimes you'll come across an attic access where the door isn't on, and that it's important to make sure that the door is always on and hasn't been lifted up, because then if there is a fire in the garage, it's just easier for the fire to spread upwards, which is what we don't want. So very, very, very important. Now, oftentimes, if you do see cracking on a garage floor, the cracking on the garage floor, because the floor is independent of the foundation wall, most of the time it's not a concern. But you do want to take a look around the garage itself to make sure the cracking isn't happening because the grade isn't sufficient, right? Six inches of fall for the first 10 feet. And then when you're looking at the garage door itself, a lot of different things that you can look at that are very important to do. The garage door panels themselves, make sure they're not damaged or bent. You're going to encounter warning labels on the garage system itself, indicating that the system is going to be under high tension, that it's going to be a nuisance for small children, keep them away from the door. Any type of springs or hardware, you want the hardware to be secure. Any type of garage spring that helps to keep the door open, you don't want the springs to be stretched. You don't want the springs to be rusted. You want a safety cable installed for those springs too, just in case if the spring does snap. You also want photoelectric eyes that sense if someone is underneath the door. You don't want them to be too high. They're not supposed to be any higher than 6 inches. That way, if for some reason, if a little one is underneath the door, hopefully the eye will be able to sense that they are underneath there, and then that the door will actually reverse. So this is so before we get to the videos, I wanted to review this with you all really quickly because it's just something that comes up time and time again. So dryer exhaust, dryer ducting exhaust and the exhaust vents. So the maximum length of the closed dryer exhaust duct should not be greater than 35 feet from the dryer's location to the wall or roof termination. And then also this is important too, because oftentimes you'll come across multiple bends happening behind the dryer. For every 45-degree bend, the maximum length of the duct should be reduced by 2.5 feet. For each 90-degree bend, the maximum should be reduced by 5 feet. So very, very important. So what I would do, just because this is a lot here, just take a picture of this. So for every 45-degree bend, the maximum length of the duct should be reduced by 2.5 feet. For every 90-degree bend, the amount should be reduced by 5 feet, because if it's too long, then we're going to have problems getting all the lint out. That's what we're worried about here. Now, on the outside, you're going to come across this. If you're not already coming across it already frequently, you're going to see a screen on the exterior dryer vents. Whenever you see a screen on the dryer vents, you need to bring it to the family's attention and say, hey, this is a fire concern. This is a safety concern. As you can see, but with a close-up picture, that a screen on the dryer vents will actually block the lint from leaving the ducting system. And if enough of it builds up, when you combine it with hot air, then that lint is flammable. So it's important to know if you have bends in the ducting system, how much do those bends affect the length of how long you can actually run this ducting system, and then is there a screen or not on that exterior vent? Because if there is, then it needs to go. All right. So with that, I am going to play several different videos here. So just bear with me.
According to the InterNACHI Home Inspection Standards of Practice, the inspector shall inspect the exterior wall covering materials, the eaves, soffit, and fascia, a representative number of windows, all the exterior doors, flashing and trim, adjacent walkways and driveways, stairs, steps, stoops, stairways, and ramps, porches, patios, decks, balconies, and carports, railings, guards, and handrails, and vegetation, surface drainage, and retaining walls and grading around the property where they may adversely affect the structure due to moisture intrusion. The home inspector also should describe the type of exterior wall covering materials, and the home inspector shall report as in need of correction any improper spacing between intermediate balusters, spindles, and rails.
Now we're going to start section 3.2, which is the exterior. It's grounds, exterior of the house, wall cladding, things like that. Just want to point out, you should always look at the boulevard sidewalk. Certain jurisdictions like Denver, it is the homeowner's responsibility to maintain and fix this. So if you have trip hazards, such a thing, the city can tell the homeowner they have to fix it, and it's a pretty expensive problem. You know, coming up the driveway, I would write this driveway up as crack settled, trip hazards. It's just not in great shape. As we come into the sidewalk, you know, it looks like they've replaced the porch and part of the sidewalk. That's great. You know, this looks better. Now, downspouts. You know, this is not a great spot for a downspout to discharge. North side of the house, going to be cold. Would have been better if they'd changed the slope and discharged it over there. I would mention to my clients, you know, this is just going to kind of keep this area icy. This sidewalk could definitely become a slip hazard in the summer or the winter. Okay, there's our gas meter. We have brick veneer cladding, and then we have a fibrous siding. You are required to put that in the report. We're required to talk and report on the condition. Now, when we were on the roof, I talked about venting, and I could see somebody had added soffit vents. That might be an indication that we had some ice damming, things like that going on, so we saw a little of that scalloping on the roof. So those weren't original, so I know somebody's added them. The porch looks good. Grading looks pretty good. I would write up the window well for a water-resistant load-bearing cover for safety, because that's a pretty big fall. We'd also measure it to see if it needs a ladder. Here we have an outside hose faucet. and it looks like we have a tie-in for maybe a sprinkler system. You know, this outside hose faucet, there's no caulking, there's no separation, so this copper line is in direct contact with the brick. It's not loose. This is also not a freeze-proof, so I would definitely put a note about that so they shut it off in the winter so it doesn't split and freeze. Okay, our brick veneer. This house is a little early for weep holes in this area. Typically now we want to see a weep hole every 33 inches, but in 1971 they were not doing that here. So, little bit of cracking might mean we have a little bit of settlement on this area. With a big window, that's not totally unusual. I would put a note, there was cracks in the brick mortar at the north side above the egress window. I'd put a note about that. Got a little bit of deteriorated mortar here. I'd note that in the report. So far, paint looks pretty good, trim looks pretty good. The paint's a little chipped at the caulking, but the caulking for the windows looks good. Now, on this side, I saw we had a gate over here. So we'll get to here and then we'll work our way around the house that direction. Again, make sure you look at the window well. I always recommend the covers. Okay, on this side of the garage, if you look right here, you can see everything slopes towards the garage. So that's not an ideal situation. You know, we want to see a positive ½ a foot slope for about the first 10 feet away from the house. So eventually this can cause problems. You know, the good news is it's a garage, so we have a slab right there. If there's a house, a lot of times we'd see a bowed foundation wall there. And then over here, the soil's too high at the siding at the garage. So I would want to write that up because we're required to write up any soil contact, and that soil's just too high. So this side really needs to be cut out and sloped away and basically a swale put in here. Looking up here, remember we talked about the drip edge flashings. Gable vent right there. Most areas of the world, you do not mix gable vents and soffit vents for roofing. In Colorado, we see it fairly standard because we have such a sun load that sometimes that's the only way they can get a roof to vent correctly is just having more vents. So it's not completely unusual, but most places you will call it out as a defect if you see a gable vent and soffit vents. Okay, we're gonna have to go around because this gate doesn't let us through. Okay, coming to this side with the shed here. Sheds are not part of our standards of practice. We do not inspect sheds. I can't see a lot because of, one, the occupant stuff and the shed being right here. So there's a lot I can't see. Here we have a splashback. I would probably still talk to my clients about getting an extension pipe, but they do have something to take the water away. Here I can see the foundation. So on the outside we're going to see some of it. In the basement, remember, we couldn't really see any of it. Again, I'm going to look at my window caulking. Here we have a little paint chipping, but the window caulking still seems really good. So all in all, the paint looks pretty good. Now, when I see these little things, if you look, there's like 1.5 inches, sometimes there's 2-inch holes. What that tells me is at some point, somebody drilled holes in this siding and usually they blew insulation. So in 1971, we didn't have exterior wall insulation. Somebody's added it now. So that's a good thing. And I might point it out to my clients and say, hey, it looks like somebody's added some exterior wall insulation. We don't know if it was done to everything, but typically when I see those, that's what it tells me. So here, we're getting some cracking. We're getting some moisture damage. I'd put a note that there was some moisture damage on the siding. Remember, the siding is quite old. It's actually held up pretty good for fibrous siding. Coming through, when we were doing our electrical, we would have checked to make sure this is GFCI protected, everything. Typically, I don't like to see things hooked up like this, but, you know, people like their exterior lighting for their patios, things like that. Again, grading, we're pretty flat here. We don't really slope too much away from the house. We slope a little bit this way, but I would talk to my clients about working on the grading, and I would definitely have it in the report that we have poor grading. Working our way down, again, you see the soffit vents. On the back of the garage, we have a small landing here. It looks like somebody's replaced the door and they never trimmed it. So I would put a note that the garage exterior door was not trimmed at the exterior. Here we have our original window. And again, now with the occupant's belongings, so I'd have a note on this, you know, portions of the exterior were not visible due to the occupant's belongings. Back here, fences are not part of a standards of practice. We are not required to inspect fences. But when I see an obvious problem with a fence like this back here, I'm going to write it up as a safety hazard, because my clients might have kids, they might have pets, the neighbors might have a dog that's not very nice, and that's not a very secure fence. And, you know, kids playing around it could just get hurt. So I would write up anything that I think would be a safety hazard. Even though it's not part of our standard, I don't want to see somebody get hurt on a house that I inspected. Okay, there, we're just wrapping up the 3.2, the exterior portion of the house. You know, we did look at a little bit of the foundation here. You know, that kind of leads us into jumping into 3.3, which is foundation, structure, things like that. So let's head to the basement.
Bill, you got any comments on that while I get the other video started?
I will say it's a good combination to be able to not just listen and read about what we're supposed to be doing, but then also seeing someone in real life practice what we're actually teaching. And again, the big thing you saw Jim just, you know, trying to take everything in from a macro level, but then also looking very, very closely up on the wall too. So good combination between the two. Definitely knows his stuff.
Yeah, he does. Really good guy. All right, I'm gonna start the second video. This one's about 30 minutes long. Are we watching the whole thing?
Yes.
All right, so we'll watch this one and then we'll wrap it up after this.
Hi, I'm Ben from InterNACHI. In this short video, we're going to learn how to inspect the exterior of a house. Now, according to the standards of practice, a home inspector is required to inspect several things related to the exterior of the house, and the standards of practice is located online at nachi.org/SOP. And if we go there, you'll see the standards of practice, and there's an exterior section, and it reads, "The inspector shall inspect the exterior wall covering materials." That makes sense. On the outside, what covers the building envelope. The inspector shall inspect the eaves, soffit, and fascia. A representative number of windows, not all of them, can't inspect all of them during a home inspection. All of the exterior doors. The inspector shall inspect the flashing and trim, adjacent walkways and driveways, stairs, steps, stoops, stairways, and ramps, porches, patios, decks, balconies, and carports, railings, guards, and handrails, and vegetation, surface drainage, retaining walls, and the grading of the property where they may adversely affect the structure due to moisture intrusion. The inspector shall describe the type of exterior wall covering materials. That's pretty easy to do. And the inspector shall report as in need of correction any improper spacing between intermediate balusters, spindles, and rails. So that's what's required according to the standards of practice. The other URL is nachi.org/education. And if you wanted to learn a little bit about how to inspect one of those systems or components of the exterior, like the deck, you can go to nachi.org/education, and in the search field, type in whatever you want to inspect. So I'll type in deck, and it automatically pops up how to perform deck inspections. And there's a how to perform deck inspections video course. So there's resources at InterNACHI's education. The other URL is nachi.org/catalog. And there you'll find InterNACHI's accreditation. InterNACHI is accredited as a post-secondary institution by the Accrediting Council for Continuing Education and Training, which is a national accrediting agency recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, to provide tuition-free online training, examination, certification, and continuing education to InterNACHI members. InterNACHI is essentially an accredited college. To check your organization or your school's accreditation, go to ed.gov/accreditation, and you type in your favorite school. So how about InterNACHI I typed in InterNACHI, and boom, the InterNACHI school pops up. InterNACHI school is essentially an accredited university for home inspectors. And the InterNACHI school does not charge tuition to its students who are InterNACHI members. So let's inspect 3 houses, the exterior of 3 houses. Here's one here. And let's remember what the standards of practice requires us to do. Well, this is me coming down from my ladder. So this is a shot of the gutter. And from here on, I think of the rest of the house until I go inside as the exterior. So as I come down from inspecting the roof from my ladder or an vantage point, I'll take a look at the siding materials. And there's the second floor windows. I can't get to all of the windows. I'm not required to inspect all of the windows, just a representative number of windows. And also hoods or vents I'm looking. So this could be a bathroom hood or a dryer exhaust. I'll try to pay attention to what I see and observe on the second floor and in the attic. I'm required to inspect flashing and trim, so I wanted to look at the top of windows and doors. Look at the header flashing. There's metal flashing installed on top of all the windows here. And I want to see how rainwater, the runoff, is captured, controlled, diverted away from the house foundation. So here we have a downspout at the front left corner of the front porch, not diverting water away from the foundation of the house. So this is a minor defect. There's a grading away from the house. That's good. There's a fence in the way. Fences are not part of a home inspection, according to the standards of practice, but you may include them in your report. You may exceed the standards of practice. And we have an article written by legal counsel on how to exceed the standards of practice in a more uniform way for all of your clients. And there's the fence. There's the backyard. Another downspout. Rear left downspout is not diverting water away from the foundation. So as I inspect the exterior, I'm going to keep in mind what I may find on the interior side. So I'm going to look in this corner of the basement. It looks like a poured concrete foundation. I'll look for water intrusion. There's some personal items that are restricting and limiting my visual only inspection. I'll document them in my report. Also, when inspecting the exterior, you bump into other systems. So this is the air conditioning unit, and it's not level. It's actually tilted a lot from probably settlement of the dirt around the house. And this downspout is kind of scrunched in between the deck and the siding materials, and it too is not diverting water away from the house foundation. So that's a minor defect. Here's a fireplace. Direct vent is the vent coming out of the back side of the fireplace, but it's within a couple feet of a window. So I want to make sure that we're not in any code violation here. So that's an openable window within 23 inches. I want to take a look at that. When you're performing a home inspection and you don't know, it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'll look it up and I'll get that information for you as soon as possible. So right here, I have the freedom to say, well, I'm not a code inspector, I'm just a home inspector, but I'll look this up since we're a little concerned about the proximity of the gas fireplace, direct vent, and the openable window. There's another fireplace on the other side of the house, and it has a vent as well. And the flashing around it looks really good. And the overhang looks good. Remember, the soffit, fascia, and eaves is a requirement in the standards of practice. I'm required to also describe the type of wall covering material. And this house is covered with vinyl siding. And the vinyl siding looks good. Here's the front porch, poured concrete front porch. A little bit of minor patching in the front. I'm not really concerned about it. I'll point it out as a cosmetic issue. A cosmetic defect is a superficial blemish or flaw. And we have a fake stone application. Man-made stone is applied to the house. So that's another type of wall covering material, exterior wall covering material being described in my report with pictures and text. Here's an egress door or an exterior door. The trim around it looks good. The flashing at the top looks good. The sealant around this pipe coming through the vinyl siding should be sealed up. It's missing. The sealant is missing. So we don't want little critters to walk in through that opening. We don't want water intrusion to come through. And that's discharging away from the house foundation. So I know that there's a sump pump on the outside. Things on the outside, while I'm inspecting the exterior, I'm going to anticipate when I go on the inside of the house. Remember the hood of the exhaust from a bathroom or a dryer? I'm not sure that we saw earlier. I'll have to keep that in mind. Here's a sump pump discharge. The air conditioner was off level. So a house is a system of interdependent parts where one part affects many others. So this is a picture of an inspection image of a dryer exhaust, or maybe a bathroom exhaust termination. High efficiency furnace is at the house, gas furnace. And I can see the intake and the exhaust. And that's probably, the third thing is probably the exhaust of the hot water tank. But I'll keep that all in reserve until I go inside. Taking a look, indeed that is a vent, but I'm not sure if it's a bathroom or a dryer. If it's a dryer exhaust, I may recommend this to be replaced with something like a hood where there's a damper. These louvers tend to age, warp, and then get stuck, and then get clogged. So this is a nice bathroom exhaust termination, but it's not very good for a dryer. And there's some flashing rubber sealant. And this is a basement door, steel doors going down to the basement. All receptacles on the outside need to be GFCI protected. So I'll have one of these. This is my main exterior tool. Is a GFCI tester. And here's the other tool, screwdriver, so you can probe around. Now where a deck attaches to the house, I'm going to look for ledger board flashing details. Look at the slider door here. Look at the fastening of the deck or stairs to the house. Looks like this step is curled up a little bit, so it's a potential trip hazard. Some of the steps are curled. They need to be refastened. The nails are starting to withdraw from the ledger board as well, and you can't have nails in the ledger board. So I like this, 1/2-inch bolts or lag screws. And the floor joists are attached with joist hangers and fasteners. 2 more exhaust hood terminations. So that's 4 in my head. I have to figure out what is going on. And maybe I can't. Maybe on the inside, the exterior things are not evident. And that's okay. It's a visual only inspection. It's not exhaustive. Found a pipe on the outside in the backyard. I'm not sure what it is. I saw the sump pump, discharge pipe. I don't know what this is. Maybe a drainage pipe? I'll put it in the report as a question for my client to ask the homeowner. From afar, the exterior looks good. Up close, there are some defects. That air conditioner needs to be leveled off. The structure of the deck looks good. I think they added, just before I came, those big bolts all over the place. So everywhere there were nails fastening the structural components of the deck to the house, they added lag screws and bolts and through bolts. So this isn't built the way I would like it, with a ledger board or a beam resting on the post with a cut, with a ledge. But I'll let it go. This is a ramp, and in the interior course, you can learn about ramps and steps and stairways and the slope of the ramp and the handrail. Remember, we're not code inspectors, but this is a ramp, and there should be a landing at the top and a landing at the bottom of the ramp. I'm also looking for steps. You can't have a very large step like this. So this is a trip hazard. And I'll use my fingers like that to show that the step is too large. I'll also look at the driveways and walkways. The driveway's asphalt looks in pretty good shape. looking for cracks, signs of puddling, depressions, minor hairline crack, I think from settlement, that's okay. No wood rot at the bottom of the doors or windows. So when I inspect a door, I'll look at the bottom left, bottom right, top left, that counterclockwise rotation, always. It's a pattern in my inspection process. I go through a pattern. I inspect the exterior in the same way. Actually, I approach the front from afar, and then I move up, and then move around the house in a counterclockwise fashion. I'll even do the interior rooms in that way, counterclockwise. I'll inspect a window in that way, counterclockwise, with the bottom left being first. Bottom left, bottom right, top left. Exterior receptacles are GFCI protected, that's good. The posts look good. Now where there's a standing surface or walking surface that's more than 30 inches above the ground, a fall from that could cause a serious injury, so a guard is recommended, just for safety. And I'm doing the exterior, but I bump into the electrical. There's the electrical system, meter, line, service line, grounding, rod, phone, cable. There's the gas line going in, and that needs sealed there, yep. And there's the underground buried tank for the propane. There's the gallons, there's the controls. All exterior water faucets in this climate, cold climate, should be frost proof so they don't freeze in the wintertime. House number 2, let's take a look at the exterior of this house. Now the exterior is everything on the outside. Well, when I'm on the roof, I'm looking at everything that I can from those vantage points, and I bump into things like this. So this cupola is part of the exterior. That's where I put it in my report. And this cupola is, well, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of wood rot there. Don't worry about damaging something that's already damaged. Don't worry about revealing something and communicating that when it's already rotten. So this is already rotten. You can see I'm pulling rotten pieces out of the cupola itself. I'm not worried about it. In fact, that's your job. If you do damage to a home, don't worry. That is your job. And we have an article in our online library of inspection articles about what happens when a home inspector does damage to a home. You should read that. Ventilation, I can see from the outside. The exterior inspection includes other components. So there's a gable vent. And flashing, I'm required to inspect the flashing according to the exterior section of the Home Inspection Standards of Practice. So while I'm there, I'm going to take a look at the flashing. The step flashing is actually missing. They didn't install it with the second layer of shingles. They really should have. Now water can travel underneath, in between the top layer and the original layer. The wood siding looks good. The paint looks good. Downspouts are diverting water far away from the house foundation. I'm missing a gutter strap. This little roof section over this bump out window area has a lot of silicone, white sealant and black sealant. The flashing is missing. They must have a problem. So I'm going to remember this when I go on the inside and take a look up with my infrared camera and moisture meter. Because white silicone is a Band-Aid fix for something. There's a really long discharge pipe coming out, probably from a sump pump. It's open, so it should be sealed up. I like to crawl underneath things if I can. I'm going to take a look at that basement window there. Hopefully it's not an egress window, because that would be hazardous. Dense vegetation, I'll take a look. Window wells, I'll take a look. The grading and slope I'm going to pay attention to. The landscaping, the site, the environment. Looks like we have some trees coming in contact with the roof. Some dents in the aluminum siding here. It's old siding. So you're going to have some cosmetic issues, like little bumps, holes, things like that. I think they replaced the old wooden shutters with these plastic ones. The plastic ones are narrow. They're fake. Maybe the original ones were actually functional shutters. So it's not going to match up. You're going to have some patching here. There are different kinds of exterior siding. So aluminum, but vertical. There's my money shot. You got to put your inspection vehicle in the report. And the driveway looks really good. It just rained. So that's kind of like, for me as a home inspector, an ideal time to inspect the exterior. Because I'm looking for standing water, puddles, drainage problems, flashing problems that may allow bulk water to enter the house. There's some wood rot at the bottom of trim near the garage door. I just use my screwdriver, tap it, try to listen to how it sounds. If it sounds like a thud, it could be rotten. So I'll probe it with a moisture meter to make sure. Here's some steps at the exterior door. It's not the egress door. It doesn't matter. It's still a trip hazard. The storm door opens over the steps. That's okay. The door itself should not in this case. And the step is too high. There's a dryer vent hood. So the other hoods must be from, well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see on the inside. There's some capping on the old wooden trim boards of the windows. We got a loose downspout strap. Looks like that's a kitchen hood. Exterior siding looks okay. There's a spotlight there. Still looking at the capping because wherever there's capping, especially on an older existing home, the capping may be hiding something, like wood rot. They capped it to make it look nice, but maybe to protect the structural components too, or the components of the wooden window frame. But no one has seen it for a long time, right? And maybe water somehow got underneath the capping. It looks good on the outside, but when you squeeze the capping, you can hear like crunching materials. Maybe. So I like to grab things and squeeze them. Like I like to grab a soft brass chrome-plated trap and squeeze it a little bit. If it breaks in my hand, that's okay. If this squishes and I go right through the capping maybe and open it up and find wood rot, that's okay. So there's the underside. It's not pressure treated, so a lot of this wood is rotten actually. That bottom is rotten, and that corner, that load-bearing corner of this entire deck is resting on a CMU, concrete masonry unit, and it's in the wrong direction, and it's not even correctly done. It's not secure, and it could collapse. It could actually break under some weight there. So it's not installed properly. It shouldn't have been installed like that. That's a structural defect. Major defect, we need a contractor to come and help us. And we've got wood rot all over the place. The ends of the deck floorboards are rotten. The posts, load-bearing components, are rotten. That's my finger going through a load-bearing post. That's a step with wood rot at the end. These are not pressure-treated pieces of wood. There's a post at the corner, and it's leaning because there's wood rot above this post on the load-bearing floor joists at the ends. There's my screwdriver going through the rotten components at the corner load-bearing component, and it's leaning over. Another defect there with the concrete masonry unit. The railing isn't any good because it's rotten in some areas. My screwdriver goes right through some of the floorboards, just like that. Now, when my screwdriver goes through a floorboard like that, I'll take a picture of it and put that in the report. I'm not hiding anything. If my screwdriver goes through, it's not my fault, right? My screwdriver is used to test for wood rot, and a successful test for wood rot is when my screwdriver goes through that board. So I'm not hiding anything. I didn't cause that damage. I'm just revealing it. So I'll put that picture right in my report. Many more pictures of wood rot, just like that. And like that. My hand almost went through. Okay, some other trim boards up. Exterior water faucets should be frost proof. This is in Pennsylvania, a cold climate, and it's not. So in the wintertime, that could freeze and burst. Lots more wood rot all over the place. I'm concerned here because this is a thin layer of concrete or mortar or cement that was poured on top of a rotten piece of wood that is at the sill, the tread plate of a slider door. So we are now getting really close to having an open water entry point for moisture to enter the house at the slider door, which is a common area to look for water intrusion. And so I'm going to remember this and look at the band rim joist and floor joist ends and the subfloor structure underneath the slider door in this area from within the basement or crawl space. Exterior receptacles. I want a nice cover on there. That's not an exterior cover. old air conditioner unit, natural gas supplied, and it's off. Electric meter. Water could penetrate behind the meter itself, and actually it has, and I can push back on the siding and see that there's some structural damage. There's a piece of plywood that's rotten behind the electrical meter. Where two dissimilar materials meet during an exterior inspection, I'm going to look for separation. I'm going to see how those two are meeting, flashed or sealed or overlapping or in a shingle-like manner to divert water away. And this has been patched up with so much silicone and paint that there might be a concern here. Maybe the chimney has separated slightly and settled slightly, which is okay, but it has caused the homeowner to keep gooping in a lot of sealant and silicone, which is just a temporary patch if not done well. There's a vent there for the porch roof with some wood rot, but the vent is partially painted over. And some minor imperfections. Someone tried to correct some settling or some cracking of the front porch with a thin layer of cement, which never lasts. So it's a cosmetic issue right now. And some indications of cracking and settlement of the front porch from the required egress door tread step. But that's okay. And waterproof faucets are required. We're missing a small component at the top of the light fixture. And the very old windows in this old existing home have cracking window putty. Okay, let's go to the third house. Third and last house. And this is a townhouse. So there aren't any sides. It's not an end unit. It's right in the middle of the row. Starting from where the gutter ends. Oh, the tree in the front yard is in contact with the roof and the gutter and the structure itself, so that needs to be trimmed. There's missing flashing, called kickout flashing, at the corner where that inside corner is, above the black railing. Above that black railing, you can see stains, and that's because of the missing kickout flashing is allowing water to miss the gutter, and it could be causing problems with the stucco. And I saw that from an advantage point at the top of my ladder. The eaves, soffit, and fascia I'm going to take a look at. The railing I'm going to take a look at. Here's my ladder. Walks, steps, stoops. We're required to inspect those. Could be part of a homeowners association, but I'm going to inform my client of anything that I find, especially a trip hazard. Take a picture of my truck. There it is in the parking lot. And we'll go upstairs to this deck. And the structural components of the deck from underneath look pretty good. This is the front of the house, which starts on the second floor. The entry door, egress door is on the second floor. So you go up on this deck, and the deck looks good. And there's a light at the top of the stairs, illuminating the stairs going up. The landing. Now the railing is loose. It's completely loose. It's not even fastened. Very loose. It's supposed to hold 200 pounds in any direction, that railing, that guard. And the intermediate spindles, well, they're attached to the guard. So that's a safety hazard there. All exterior receptacles need to be GFCI protected. A little damage at the front window. Maybe somebody bumped into it. Torn screen, very minor stuff. The handle locking mechanism of the front storm door doesn't work. I label that as a minor defect. The downspouts are diverting water away from the house. Some wood rot at the front window shutter feature. Some minor cracking of some masonry could be patched up. We have a missing piece of glass at the light fixture at the stairs. And it looks like there was a closet, roof leak. So the closet is separated from the exterior. There's a little like walk-in closet, and there was a roof leak in the past, not now. The light bulb didn't turn on, but I confirmed with my voltage tester that there was electricity, and the switch worked. There's that little closet. So this is the rear deck. The rear deck has a closet. You walk out from the slider door from the living room, walk out onto the rear deck, second floor. I see that there's an air conditioning unit or heat pump and a closet on the other side. The railing is a little loose. I'm wiggling it with my hand, and it's actually separated. So the railing is separated from the fastening is actually exposed. It's pulled out from the wall. So this is a major defect. We need a contractor to come out. A minor defect is like a dirty air filter. The homeowner can do it. When you have to hire a contractor to fix the railing, that's a major defect. And a material defect is something that is imminent, and it's going to hurt someone, pose an unreasonable risk to someone's life, or have an adverse impact on the value of the home. So something really major is a material defect. Soffit looks good. I think they had a grill there. That's why that's all black. That's the underside of the porch, so it shouldn't be like dirty. So it must have been a grill. There's a little bit of cracking, as if the deck floor structure settled a little bit, and that's where that railing pulled off too. That's interesting. Slider door, all exterior receptacles are GFCI protected. There's that missing light fixture again. There's the heat pump, and it is tucked in there, and there's not a lot of clearance around it. So that's a bit of a restriction. I don't think it can be fixed. I'm just going to put it in the report as my observation. Ideally, we want some clearance all around that unit. There's a lot of air movement around there. And it's so dirty, it's probably an indication of delayed maintenance. Now I'm on the grounds in the rear yard behind the townhouse. We already inspected the second floor deck from the living room and slider with the closet and the air conditioning unit, heat pump. Now I'm going to look at the exterior from the outside. And there's the main beam that holds the second floor deck that we were just on. And it's capped. You know, we just went over capping. Looks good on the outside, but sometimes it could be covering up something, and the homeowner doesn't even know, or they're totally unaware that there could be something underneath the capping because of water intrusion be underneath the capping and destroying. Water destroys. Could have destroyed some wood there. And this is a load-bearing beam. So I'm going to take a little extra time and see if this is okay. I'm going to kind of push on it, maybe peel off something without popping the fasteners, see if I can see what's underneath the capping. The floor joists look good. All pressure treated, attached to the structure really well. Looking really good. The ledger board, flashed, fastened. But I pulled off some of the capping off that main beam. And sure enough, wood rot. A lot of it. In fact, so much that I deemed it to be a material defect, as if this deck was going to collapse. If we had a party on there, I bet we can get that beam to collapse the entire deck. It was so rotten. I put my hand underneath the capping. I decided to bend the capping. It was so bad because I needed to reveal this to the current homeowner. I went back to the slider door that goes to the second floor deck, and I tagged it to not open. Don't open the slider and don't go on the deck. And I informed the homeowner through their real estate agent. My client was with me. Obviously, this needs to be fixed if they're going to buy the home, but every home should be inspected every year. And hiring a home inspector should be part of a homeowner's routine home maintenance plan. The homeowner had no idea this was a defect, right? And without hiring a certified home inspector, I'm not sure how a homeowner could maintain their home without one. So InterNACHI believes that every homeowner should hire a certified professional inspector to inspect their home as part of a homeowner's routine maintenance plan.
We wanted to thank everybody for spending your evening with us. We know 3 hours is definitely a lot of time to be able to commit to something like this. So thank you very much for listening, contributing. Hopefully, everyone was able to take something away from the presentation today. We have more webinars coming. Lots of great information. If you want to reach out and ask ask any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Phil Dancer at Dancer & Co. Other than that, again, thanks for attending, y'all.